Harley Davidson just triggered its own fire sale. $4.8 billion gone, a legendary brand gutted by greed. Their new CEO promised a turnaround, but instead, dealers are slashing prices to clear out mountains of unsold bikes, while thousands of jobs vanish overnight. They want you to believe it's business as usual, but insiders saw the collapse coming. A company drained for quick cash, iconic machines dumped for pennies as the soul of Harley is sacrificed. Now with dealers in chaos and once loyal riders stunned by the deals flooding the market, you have to wonder, how did America's motorcycle hero become its own worst enemy? The answer starts with who Harley chose to ignore. Harley Davidson's biggest secret wasn't hidden in a boardroom memo or buried in some Wall Street filing. It was right there in the crowd at every rally. Gray hair, leather vests stretched over 50-something waistlines, and not a single teenager in sight. The average Harley buyer in America? Over 50. That's not a blip. That's a demographic time bomb. For years, internal strategy decks warned the company the core customer base was aging out and the next wave wasn't coming. Young riders, when they showed up at all, were looking at other brands or skipping motorcycles entirely. Harley's own data painted it in black and white. The median age of a new Harley owner crept up year after year, passing 47, then 49, then 50. Gen Xers and millennials weren't picking up the torch. The pipeline was dry. Meanwhile, the company's public face told a different story. Executives brushed off concerns, talking up premium positioning and selective supply. But inside, the mood was panic. Every year, fewer first-time buyers. Every year, more lifelong customers hanging up their helmets for good. The numbers were brutal. In 2023, Harley's US retail sales dropped nearly 9%. That's not just a bad year, that's a generation walking away. And still, the company doubled down on high-margin touring bikes, chasing profit per unit instead of growing the base. The strategy? Squeeze more from the loyalists. Ignore the empty seats at the table. Dealers felt it first. Showrooms that used to buzz with 20-somethings now felt like retirement mixers. The only thing getting younger was the marketing budget. And when insiders tried to sound the alarm, management pointed to macroeconomic conditions and product mix, anything but the obvious. The truth was staring everyone in the face. Harley wasn't losing a few customers. It was losing an entire generation. The warning lights were flashing, but the company kept its foot on the gas, convinced the brand could outrun the clock. That's how the stage was set for desperate moves, for a new CEO with a wild plan, and for the kind of decisions that would gut a legend for good. Official statements poured out of Milwaukee like clockwork. Every quarter, Harley's top brass hit the same tired notes: premium focus, disciplined supply, and profitable growth. Press releases skipped over the empty showrooms and shrinking crowds, insisting the company was simply leaning into premium segments and selectively managing supply to protect brand equity. In the second quarter of 2024 earnings call, the message was clear. Our focus remains on premium segments and selective supply. This is about profitable growth, not chasing mass market volume at the expense of brand or margin. No mention of the missing generation. No hint that the core customer was aging out, or that the pipeline was bone dry. Instead, executives pointed to macroeconomic conditions and changes in product mix, as if a global recession had somehow made motorcycles invisible to anyone under 50. The 2023 annual report blamed an 8.8% sales drop on everything but the obvious. Harley's leadership kept spinning the same story. If you can't grow the base, just squeeze more from the loyalists. Push up prices, cut the models that don't deliver fat margins, and call it a transformation. Analysts rolled their eyes. Dealers gritted their teeth, but the official line never wavered. The hardwire strategy continues to deliver, said one investor update, with our transformation to a more premium positioning, supporting brand equity and profitability. All while dealers were forced into fire sales, and lifelong riders watched their favorite models vanish from the lineup. Behind closed doors, panic was setting in. But on stage, Harley's management acted like the party would never end, so long as they kept pouring top-shelf whiskey for the last few guests still standing. The disconnect between boardroom bravado and ground-level reality was impossible to miss, and it was about to cost the company everything. Jochen Zeitz wasn't a biker. He wasn't even American. Before Harley, he ran Puma, the sneaker company. The board handed him the keys to Milwaukee's most sacred garage, betting a brand manager with a European accent could save a fading American icon. Riders called foul the minute his name hit the press. Here was a guy who made his reputation slashing costs and pumping margins, not building engines or earning scars on the open road. For Zeitz, loyalty wasn't measured in miles. It was measured in dollars per unit. His first order of business? Cut everything that didn't scream profit. Entry-level bikes, gone. Mid-range models, axed. The Sportster 883, the Road King Electra Glide Standard, wiped from the lineup like they never existed. Dealers watched the factory shut off the tap, shipments dropping by double digits. Zeitz called it disciplined supply. To the people on the ground, it felt like a slow-motion liquidation. Inside Harley's headquarters, every meeting was about margin. Zeitz pushed for higher prices, fewer discounts, and a laser focus on premium segments. If a model didn't deliver fat profits, it was dead weight. Workers who'd spent decades on the line got pink slips or buyouts, while the press releases bragged about operational efficiency. The Kansas City plant closure alone cost 800 jobs, with promises of redeployment that never materialized. Wall Street cheered as the numbers briefly ticked up, but on Main Street, the mood was bitter. Dealers grumbled about shrinking allocations and forced sales targets. Lifelong employees watched a century-old company turn into a spreadsheet. And all the while, Zeitz collected a multi-million-dollar exit package, his so-called golden leash, even as wage freezes and benefit cuts hit the rank and file. Harley's soul was being sold off, piece by piece, by a CEO who saw motorcycles as just another product to manage, not a legacy to protect. Let's talk about the LiveWire, the electric bike that was supposed to drag Harley into the future. In 2019, they rolled it out with a sticker price of $29,799. Almost 30 grand for a motorcycle that didn't rumble, didn't shake, and didn't even sound like a Harley. The company called it innovation. Riders called it a joke. Dealers got stuck with bikes nobody wanted, watching them gather dust while customers eyed cheaper, faster electrics from everyone else. First-year sales? Barely 960 units. That's not a product launch. That's a clearance rack with a lithium battery. Harley's answer? Drop the price by nearly 8 grand just 2 years later. Suddenly, the LiveWire 1 was on sale for $21,999. Imagine being one of those early buyers, paying full price, then watching the value of your brand new Harley tank faster than a used smartphone. Dealers were furious. Early adopters felt burned. The only people smiling were bargain hunters and YouTube reviewers looking for cheap content. But the real punchline came in 2021, when Harley spun off LiveWire as its own brand. They pushed out press releases about unlocking new markets and embracing the future. But the truth was obvious. The experiment flopped, and now they were trying to shove the mess off their own balance sheet. Wall Street barely blinked. The LiveWire went public with a $1.77 billion valuation, but nobody was fooled. Harley still owned a big chunk, and Zeitz himself kept a seat at the head of the table, just in case the electric dream ever paid off. The LiveWire saga wasn't just a failed product. It was a masterclass in corporate denial, a $30,000 lesson in how to alienate your core and chase a market that never wanted you in the first place. All that time, money, and hype? Gone. And the financial drain? Still hanging over the company like a dead battery. Next came the real reckoning. when the bill for all these missteps finally landed in Milwaukee. Kansas City was more than just another dot on Harley's factory map. For nearly 2 decades, that plant was a lifeline, paychecks, health insurance, and pride for around 800 families. Then the shutdown order came down, and it wasn't some slow fade-out. Overnight, workers who'd spent years on the line were out, gone. The company called it a move toward efficiency. For the people left standing in the empty parking lot, it felt like a betrayal. Promises of redeployment and retraining were tossed around, but the reality was pink slips and severance checks that barely covered a few months' rent. Some workers took buyouts, hoping they'd land on their feet. Most just got the minimum, no matter how many years they'd given to the brand. The union tried to fight for better terms, but management wasn't interested in bargaining. Harley's executives were too busy talking up premium focus and operational discipline to Wall Street. Meanwhile, former employees lined up at job fairs, resumes in hand, competing for warehouse gigs that paid half what they used to make. The pain didn't stop at the factory gates. Local diners lost their regulars. Schools saw parents scrambling for new work. The ripple effect was real. One plant closure, hundreds of lives upended. For the people who built the bikes, Harley's transformation wasn't a strategy. It was a gut punch. And every time the company bragged about efficiency, those families heard one thing: you're expendable. Q2 of 2025 hit like a wrecking ball. Harley Davidson's revenue cratered by 19% compared to the same stretch last year. That's not a dip. That's the floor dropping out. Shipments fell even harder, down 28%. Only 36,000 bikes left the factory, while tens of thousands of unsold models sat collecting dust in dealer lots. For a company that once bragged about waiting lists, this was a nightmare. The excuses came fast: tariffs, inflation, global headwinds. But no matter how you slice it, the math was brutal. Tariffs alone drained $17 million from the bottom line in just the first half of the year, with estimates soaring as high as $85 million for the full 12 months. Every bike shipped overseas was another hit to the balance sheet. Dealers were caught in the crossfire. Forced to slash prices to move metal, some watched margins evaporate. Fire sale deals became the norm, not the exception. Harley's own leadership called it right-sizing inventory. To anyone paying attention, it looked more like a liquidation in slow motion. Wall Street didn't wait for a spin. The company yanked its full-year guidance, admitting it couldn't predict what came next. That's the kind of red flag that sends investors running. The only way out? Sell assets, unlock cash, and pray it's enough to keep the lights on. The reckoning wasn't coming, it was already here. Wall Street smelled blood, and Zeitz handed them the keys. In July 2025, Harley Davidson inked a deal with KKR and PIMCO, selling off a chunk of its crown jewel, Harley Davidson Financial Services. That's the arm that made it possible for everyday riders to buy bikes they couldn't pay for in cash. Gone. Over $4.8 billion in loan receivables, transferred to the suits for a quick $1.25 billion cash injection. The company called it a strategic partnership. But to anyone watching, it was a fire sale. For the first time, Harley's own finance engine wasn't fully under Milwaukee's control. KKR and PIMCO walked away with a 4.9% equity stake in HDFS, and Harley got a lifeline just big enough to keep the lights on. This wasn't a business move. It was asset liquidation, pure and simple. Harley's board didn't just sell off the family silver. They handed $500 million straight to shareholders. That's right. Out of the $1.25 billion cash haul from the KKR and PIMCO deal, $500 million was earmarked for stock buybacks. Not new products, not dealer support, just a fat payday for anyone holding shares. Meanwhile, only $300 million got set aside for actual business growth, developing bikes, helping dealers, maybe trying to win back the riders they'd spent years ignoring. It's the classic playbook. Reward the suits, starve the engine. While workers counted pink slips and dealers slashed prices to the bone, Harley's board cashed out. The company's future mortgaged for a short-term stock bump. Greed over grit. That's how legends die, not with a roar, but with a bank transfer. Dealers used to brag about waiting lists and sold-out launches. Now, they're practically begging anyone with a pulse to take a bike off their hands. One Midwest dealer put it bluntly, "We're being told directly by Harley to move old stock fast, even if it means squeezing our margins to nothing. If we don't, they'll cut our allocations next quarter." It's not just a few leftover models either. After Harley slashed shipments by 28%, showrooms were flooded with marked-down bikes, 20, 30% off, sometimes more. Customers walked in and saw prices that would have been unthinkable a year ago. For Harley loyalists, it felt like betrayal. For bargain hunters, it was open season. And for the dealers stuck in the middle, every discount chipped away at the brand's soul and their own bottom line. That's what liquidation looks like on the ground. In the second quarter of 2025, Harley Davidson's revenue dropped 19%, with motorcycle shipments plunging 28%. The steepest decline in a decade, as confirmed by company filings. Internal data showed the average Harley rider was over 50, with youth engagement at historic lows. Leadership's public focus on a premium image, while dismissing these warnings, set the stage for drastic changes. The arrival of a new CEO led to the $4.8 billion sell-off of Harley's finance arm, a move documented in the July 2025 partnership deal with KKR and PIMCO. $500 million went to share buybacks, while dealers slashed inventory by 28%, triggering widespread fire sales and eroding brand value. Many internal documents detailing boardroom deliberations remain undisclosed, leaving questions about long-term vision unanswered. Today, Harley's decisions are measured in layoffs, liquidated assets, and broken trust. The evidence is clear. Corporate gambles and ignored warnings accelerated the brand's unraveling, transforming an American icon into a cautionary tale.